I went to one of those science is the answer pages, and it pretty much stated that science was basically the way, the truth, and the life. And scientists lately have kind of almost upped the ante of what they take science as. They don't merely see it as a tool; they see it as a worldview almost. And I think it's a mostly positive worldview, but I think it's one that has its limitations. And I'm speaking from my own point of view here. I probably could read a lot more on the subject, but this is just what I think about the subject. Now, I agree that science is very useful. It should not be a worldview. It is nothing more than a tool, and tools can be used for good or for ill. And that's where ethics comes in. But let's be real. Ethics don't really restrain the behaviors of lawyers or even doctors, so why should it with scientists either? I mean, look at the stuff that science makes. Nuclear bombs, and now they even have technology that can read our minds, so to speak, or even test our psychology at its deepest levels to see if we're a threat to a larger whole. And everyone with a brain knows that this technology can't only be used for our benefit, it can also be used for ill. For instance, what I mean by stuff that can be used to read your mind, for instance, you can hook up your computer, your head to a computer, and you can play Sudoku without even touching it. And while you always see these videos of it only being applied to handicapped people, that's a pretty benign use for it. I mean, let's be honest, if it can help handicapped people, then it can probably help someone that might want to use it for something a little bit more malevolent, you know. So the thing is I think that science basically, in many ways, can't necessarily deal with community. I mean, unless you deal with sociology and like, oh, we're sociologists and we get together and, you know, have a good time together, you know, bowl together or whatever that is. I really don't see how science can really bring groups of people together who aren't scientists for a betterment of the world around them. I mean, you know, that's all good if scientists think they're on a crusade, so to speak, for truth, but, you know, that's fine. And I don't think that's what they're doing. It's just I do see it problematic when they try to provide it as a worldview. And I think what they're doing is not necessarily providing science as a worldview, but providing skepticism as a worldview. And I think that's adequate, but I think it is somewhat dishonest to trade the word skepticism with science, because yes, science is fueled by skepticism and vice versa, but they're not the same thing as far as I understand it. So anyways, another thing that I like to deal with here is this kind of negative view that Christians have had, that Christians have never had any positive effect on society. But there was something called the social gospel that was in the what was it? Was it late 19th century, and people like Jane Addams, who worked for women's rights, made whole houses in industrial areas so that people would have something else to do besides get drunk off their ass and get into bar fights. So she did things like that. And there's a really interesting part of my history book, and it is just one of those like really, you know, basic textbooks, but it has some interesting stuff in it nonetheless. It says, middle-class activists like Addams and Scudder. The Scudder was what did she do? Yeah, she formed an organization of college women to work in settlement houses. I just was trying to make sure I got that right there. But anyways, middle-class activists like Addams and Scudder worried in particular about the degradation of life and labor in American cities, factories, and farms. Most of them drew upon the ethical teachings of Jesus, as well as those of blah, blah, blah. The rest of it I don't care about. But anyways, for inspiration in solving social problems, they preferred a society marked by cooperation rather than competition, whereas they like to say people were guided by the golden rule rather than the rule of gold. And, you know, that is, to me, very, you know, appealing, you know. And so, I was talking to this one atheist about a month back, and he said, you know, Christians have never done anything good for society, and anybody who did, they were they were secularists and they were socialists, blah blah blah, and they were, you know. And the thing is, you know, I don't care if you're skeptic or socialist or whatever. The point is that Christianity can be used for very positive means, as it was in the 1960s for civil rights. So this idea that, you know, Christianity is somehow this you know, evil thing, I just don't buy it. I mean, there can be evil tendencies within any grouping of people because it's made up by people, and scientists know this, that the scientists can do it too. It's dishonest to point at anyone in group. But anyways, anyways, there was also this guy named Samuel Jones. He's awesome, and they called him like Golden Rule Jones or something like that. And let's see, what did he do? Jones decided to apply the Golden Rule as a rule of conduct in his factory with an 8-hour workday, $2 minimum daily wage, 50 to 75 cents higher than the local average for 10 hours, cooperative insurance, and an annual 5% Christmas dividend. Plus, during the Golden Rule on factory walls, he hired social outcasts, offering employees cheap out lunches for 15 cents and recreational activities, and established Golden Rule Hall where social visionaries could speak. And, you know, I mean, one thing that strikes me is that these people were also women, you know, and they were women and they were Christians and they were fighting for, you know, all these really neat things, you know. So, anyways, I guess I just made a video like this. My videos are very shoddily made. I don't really quote myself. I gotta work on that. I quote myself, meaning speak from my own words. I keep on just copying stuff from text. So, but hopefully that will improve. And so, anyways, thank you very much for listening to me, and have a